celebrity stars later on tonight. 10 more famous faces brave the jungle, and of course those bush tucker trials. That's tonight at 9. Good morning. You're watching ITV1.
Good morning. Boat bombers. 4 British servicemen are killed in an attack on their speedboat in a Basra canal. Is Tony Blair about to signal a change of strategy for the region?
Booze ruling. Could the European judges be about to give us the right to buy tax-free alcohol and cigarettes via the internet?
And jungle warfare. The I'm a Celebrity stars are already at each other's throats, and the show hasn't even started yet. We are live down under. That's all to come on Monday, the 13th of November 2006.
Hello, good morning from me. You're watching the News Hour here on GMTV. It's just gone 6 o'clock. We'll have more on those stories in the next hour.
Plus, as winter bites, we'll be launching our Keep Warm This Winter campaign. More in 10 minutes' time.
Also, what would you give up in order to get a good night's sleep? Money, time with your partner? What about football? No chance. A shopping even. The secret to slumber coming up.
It's actually quite a warm night, wasn't it?
Not bad at all. Very windy down here.
Right.
But warm.
Claire is in charge of the weather today.
Hello, good morning. Well, it's going to be a fairly mild week, but wet and windy. We're seeing rain gradually clearing away to the south this morning. No frost problem this morning, but you can see there will be a little bit of sunshine coming through, mostly for the eastern side of Scotland as well as England. Some strong winds to contend with, particularly across the northwest there, gusts up to 45 miles an hour, and we're seeing some showers here also. Elsewhere, a dry and finer afternoon to come, some brighter spells from time to time, and temperatures at the very best up to around 15 Celsius. Penny.
Claire, thanks very much. Forensic teams in Iraq are to investigate how insurgents were able to attack a patrol boat, killing 4 British servicemen and seriously injuring 3 others. And the Prime Minister Tony Blair is expected to call for Iran and Syria to be engaged in efforts to secure peace in the region. Richard Gaisford is at the Ministry of Defence. Richard.
Well, this team is going to be looking at exactly what type of explosive device was used to target this boat and how that happened in an open stretch of water. The Shatt al-Arab waterway is the border really between Iran and Iraq, and up until this point had been one of the more peaceful parts of southern Iraq to patrol. I mean, it is known that it's a major smuggling route of arms and explosives between Iran and Iraq, and that is one reason that Tony Blair is going to say that Iran and Syria should be brought into the fold, really. Perhaps they might have some ideas and some way of trying to quieten down some of the major issues in Iraq, and it mirrors a new approach too from the Americans, an approach that's changed since the midterm elections, to start talking to other people in the Middle East to try and sort out some of the issues there. 125 UK service personnel have now been killed since hostilities started back in 2003. The families of the 4 people who died are being told right now we don't yet know their names or their regiments, and of course there are the 3 who are seriously injured still in Iraq. They're being treated at the Shaiba Air Base. It's a major logistical base there, a big medical facility, and their condition is said to be very concerning.
Richard, thank you very much.
Let's get the rest of the news now. Here's Amanda.
John, thank you. Good morning. Shoppers could make massive savings on imported alcohol and cigarettes without even leaving home. If an EU ruling goes ahead, it would be legal to buy bulk on the internet from suppliers anywhere in Europe. Well, Rachel Harrison is at Dover. Rachel, good morning to you. Could this mean the end of the booze cruise then?
Well, yes, it could, and certainly the ferry companies are incredibly worried about this morning, as are British off-licence and indeed the Chancellor. Basically, what will happen that if this gets to go ahead next week, it means that you can order online alcohol and cigarettes from anywhere in Europe, which means it'll be tax-free to you and I, and it'll come delivered to your own door. It means we'll be making savings of around £13 on a case of beer, around £18 on a case of wine. And if you're a big smoker, listen to this: if you're buying your cigarettes from Latvia and you want to buy, let's say, 200, it would cost you £7.50, which means it would be a saving of over £40 to you. Now, clearly, this is good news for the pocket, and certainly some of the people I spoke to here yesterday but gave it a mixed reaction.
Get it? Because I like being in France and having a few of their Stellas and all.
What do you make of it? Would you still do a booze cruise?
Yeah, I still would. Yeah, still go across. It's day out. Fantastic. Saves the cost on your ferry, doesn't it?
Now, the decision will be taken next week, and there's an 80% chance it will get the go-ahead, but the Chancellor will be incredibly worried because at the moment he makes £15 billion a year from the tax on alcohol and cigarettes. If we start losing some of that money, he's going to be looking to tax us in other areas.
Thank you. The government is being accused of pandering to the tabloids in its counter-terrorism policy. A report by a left-wing think tank says sensible plans to combat terrorism are at risk because the government is playing on voters' fears to secure an election win. It also claims that Tony Blair's support for America is damaging Britain's political position in the world. A 25-year-old man has been arrested following the shooting of a police officer in Wolverhampton yesterday. The constable, who was in plain clothes at the time, was shot twice in the shoulder as he chased a man acting suspiciously in the Gracely area. The 33-year-old is in a serious but stable condition in hospital. Now, Kylie Minogue has made a triumphant return to the stage after her fight against breast cancer. She's resumed her showgirl tour in Sydney, which she was forced to abandon last year because of her illness. In front of 10,000 screaming fans, Kylie's back. She's renamed it the Showgirl Homecoming Tour. In May last year, she was diagnosed with breast cancer just days before she was to perform in Sydney. There was even a duet with Bono. The 38-year-old star admits she's had to scale back the show as she recovers, but the fans weren't disappointed.
It was amazing. She's so beautiful. Kylie's my princess.
I loved it. Thank you. It was amazing.
Kylie's performing 20 concerts in Australia and comes to Britain in January. 6 minutes past 6 is the time. I'm back at 5:30. Here's John and Penny.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Let's have a look at the morning papers. The Times has a story saying the high-profile criminal trials are going to be televised, according to the Lord Chancellor, who will reveal details later this year. The rest of the broadsheets concentrate on the death of 4 soldiers in Iraq, which we'll be dealing with a little bit later. The Independent making the point that it all happened, of course, on Remembrance Sunday. The Daily Telegraph featuring on its front page a widow of the conflict in Iraq at the cenotaph yesterday. And the FT also making the point that now that the Democrats are in control in Congress, there's obviously going to be a change of policy, or could well be a change of policy with regard to Iraq there.
The Mirror and the Mail both have that story. The Poppy Day massacre is what the Mirror is calling it, the 4 British troops dying in the Basra boat bomb. The Daily Mail has that, lest we forget. The Daily Express and the Sun both go on the loophole, which could save us billions in duty on drinks and cigarettes. You saw that in the news. We're talking about it a bit later on. Shopping bills slashed by Euro ruling. And this is a picture of David Guest, yes, and a boa constrictor, the biggest boa in the jungle. And in fact, that's Hick Hick Hooray is the headline in the Sun. And also, what a repulsive creature, but what's that around his neck? Is the other line. And finally,
irresistible, wasn't it?
It was irresistible. And finally, in the Daily Mail, John, this is a little bird who flew in. And look at him. Look at all those people around. It's a poor thing. Poor thing. He lands on the shore after he sort of gets blown off course a bit. And then suddenly is faced with that barrage of photographers.
Such as interesting twitchers. That's it. OK, let's move on to football now. And the FA are rallying to the defence of female referees this morning after their Luton manager, Mike Newell, made an astonishing outburst against assistant referee Amy Rayner for failing to flag a penalty at the weekend. This is what Mike Newell had to say. She shouldn't be here. I know it sounds sexist, but I am sexist. We have a problem in this country with political correctness, and bringing women into the game is not the way to improve refereeing and officialdom, and that was only half of it, I can tell you. Miss Dalglish, good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you make of Mr Newell's remarks?
I don't really feel qualified to comment.
No,
as a mere female,
exactly.
I probably shouldn't say anything at all. But I just think, it's well, I was going to say a bit of a fuss about nothing, but it is terrible, but it's not going to change anything. Mike Newell saying he doesn't think that women should be officiating in matches isn't going to stop the FA from allowing women to do so.
Aren't you offended by what he had to say? I mean, I have to say, half the men I know in football would secretly probably say the same.
Well, that's the thing, is that there are a lot of sexist men in football. Mike Newell's probably just one of them, and at least he's honest enough to come out and say it, which is a lot less harmful than the ones who try to do it insidiously. So Look, I don't agree with Mike Newell at all, but I know Mike, and it all sounds. Well,
There's
actually,
a pussycat underneath, isn't
quite tongue-in-cheek, I think, to me, or more of a kind of tantrum after seeing a bad decision by a referee.
Love to know what you think at home. 81189. Is there a place for women in football? Let us know your views, particularly on the touchline or with the whistle in the middle of the pitch. Let's move on to the action. Plenty of it yesterday. Great comeback by Reading yesterday. So this morning, your brother.
Yes, he is an MLS champion. He's won the American League. They went to the playoffs. They have the Western and the Eastern Conference. So they won the Western Conference because he's playing for Houston Dynamo at the moment. And they played New England Revolutions, who are managed by Stevie Nicol, the former Liverpool player.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
So Mum and Dad went over to watch him, and he's. I've got a picture of him with the cup. He's very excited.
Well, you have to bring it in to show us next time we see you.
Do.
Congratulations to Paul.
Thanks very much.
Good to see you.
You're watching the News Hour on GMTV. This morning's headlines. 3 British servicemen are still in a serious condition in hospital in Iraq after an attack which killed 4 of their colleagues.
Shoppers could be in line for massive savings on imported alcohol and tobacco thanks to an EU tax ruling.
And Kylie Minogue has made a triumphant return to the stage after her battle with breast cancer. Time is 12 minutes past 6. Now, last winter, more than 25,000 pensioners died here from the cold. Temperatures are expected to plummet again shortly, so GMTV is launching its Keep Warm This Winter campaign. Dr. Hilary Jones is in Hertfordshire for us. This winter, a question of life or death for so many.
Yeah, good morning, Penny. It's mild at the moment, but experts are predicting that it's going to get very much more chilly as the winter progresses. And that's why all this week we're going to give tips and advice to all those people who want to help their elderly parents, relatives and neighbours and protect them from this cold snap that's predicted. At the moment, it's only about 12 degrees, not too bad at all. But incredibly, and it's extraordinary to me, I'm sure it is to you, that 1.5 million pensioner homes today still have no proper heating or insulation. Neighbours and pensioners like Arthur and Susan Beach, who live here.
38 years I was here. We had a large hallway and drafts coming through the door everywhere. And the landlord didn't do nothing. And the bills were, you know, astronomical.
It is easier to keep this warm, but you've got to keep all the windows shut, everything. You can't have any fresh air in here, which you do need a little bit of fresh air. We find in this bedroom and the other front bedroom, the walls are very cold, even though you've got the heating on. And sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and it's cold. If you've turned the heating right down because you don't want it on during the night, or you shouldn't need it on, it turns really cold.
Well, inside Arthur and Susan's home, on the front wall, you can see I've got the thermometer there. It's just gone up to 18, but it was much colder earlier before they put the heating on. This wall feels damp, it feels cold. It's an outside wall with no cavity insulation, and that's why they have to have the heating on all the time, don't you, Arthur?
Yeah, yes, right, yeah.
This is a room you can't effectively use because it's so cold in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the rest of the house is all right. But what are your heating bills like? I mean, if you have to have the radiator on all the time, it must be quite costly.
They are, yeah. Well, my governor knows about the...
Your governor, Susan, what do you... I mean,
Yes, we found it quite expensive, especially last year, not realising that this was what the problem was.
Yeah.
We're just hoping that, you know,
it's going to work.
Insulation will work.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed, because what you probably don't know, and many people obviously don't know, is that every day, £10 million in benefits and grants for insulation goes unclaimed by people like yourselves.
Yeah.
And we want to raise awareness of that this week. This week we're going to get some help from Help the Aged to put insulation in this wall for you, and we're coming back to see you on Friday to see how we've got on. But one of the things I want you to do in the meantime is think about using a thermometer like this, and this is going to be available to all our viewers. We're giving away 100,000 of these wall thermometers, which have an electronic sensor which changes colour as the temperature goes down, and you can get that by phoning the number 0800 055 36 78 and doing all the sensible things like dressing warmly with lots of thin layers, eating for warmth, and doing all those sensible things as well. More of that later. Back to the studio.
Hilary, thank you very much, although Steve Jones from Help the Aged is with us in the studio. The thing is, though, that you don't want to be sitting there in your coat, do you, in your own home?
Well, no, but I think what's important during the winter is to take some practical steps that can keep us all warm. So things like wearing lots of layers, really important, you know, rather than one big thing. Eating hot meals, drinking hot drinks regularly, taking some exercise, you know, just to make sure your body keeps warm, heating the room you're in to the correct temperature using the thermometer that Dr. Hilary Jones was telling us about there, which is part of our campaign. You know, making sure that the room you're in is warm, making sure that your bedroom is warm, because many people also still feel that a cold home is a healthy home, and that it's quite fine to sleep with the window open at night, which of course is the worst thing you can do. So just keep the window
very
shut
cold
at
weather.
night.
Now, the other thing that Hilary was talking about there was about how much money goes unclaimed every year by people who are, you know, legitimately entitled to it. Part of the problem with this as well is the fact that I bet that the forms that you have to fill in are not easy.
Absolutely. There are so many reasons why people don't claim benefits, because it's difficult, the forms are complicated, they haven't got the right help. So part of the British Gas Help the Aged campaign this week is all about making sure that people understand that there are benefits are available. There are £4 billion of benefits that go unclaimed every single year, and that could go a long way to making people able to afford their fuel bills. Yeah. Also, there are grants available. The government scheme Warm Front provides free heating and insulation for certain people, and also all the suppliers have their own schemes as well that allow you to get insulation or central heating, or even grants to do things. And for example, British Gas has one called Here to Help, and other suppliers also have other ones.
And how do you get hold of these things? Do you phone up British Gas and they give you all the information, and what about the government ones?
Yes, you can either use the leaflet, again, that Hilary Jones showed. The leaflet is part of a pack called the Cold Can Kill pack, which the British Gas Help the Aged Partnership has available for people. Otherwise, ring up a number for Warm Front through the government, or a local authority will have the details of that, or phone your supplier and they'll have details of their own schemes.
And I know you're also campaigning actively for the rest of us to do more to help. Steve Jones, thank you very much. More information on the Keep Warm This Winter campaign and details about that thermometer giveaway on the website gm.tv. Thanks.
Time Yes, time now, 18 minutes past 6. It's back, as you obviously gathered from that little celebration there. Celebrity Get Me Out of Here, back on our screens tonight on the front pages this morning. There's David Guest with that snake around his neck, and our prize, the best headline this morning. Carla Romano is down there in the jungle for us. Good morning, Carla. What can you tell us?
Morning, John. I know you can hardly contain yourself. This is your highlight of the year, as it is for most of the people in the UK. What a mixed bag of contestants this year. David Guest, Liza Minnelli's ex-husband, Myleene Klass, Jason Donovan. I think the dynamic is going to be very interesting. Now, John, they have already spent their first night in the jungle. And you would think living in the jungle for a couple of weeks would be difficult enough, but their entrance into the jungle was a trial in itself. Probably, I would say, the most dramatic yet in the series. Now, they all sort of pitched up in a boat, blithely unaware of what awaited them. Well, I've got to say, David Guest certainly looked a little bit apprehensive. I think he knew something was up, but he was one of the lucky ones. His team had to kayak into their spot into the jungle. And I've got to say, a lot of talk about David Guest being a massive diva, but he fared very well. He was very take charge. And as I said, probably thanking his lucky stars that he wasn't part of the second team, which had to bungee jump from a helicopter, John. Yep, that included Myleene Klass, Jason Donovan, and poor Matt Willis from Busted. He was terrified. He was absolutely shaking. Myleene Klass, very close to a heart attack. I think she thought she was going to get caught up in the rotary blades of the helicopter. Now, as I said, I mean, an awful lot of talk about all the sort of diva egos going in there, but already there was a massive bust up before they went into the jungle. Now, David Guest didn't take too kindly to Lauren Booth, that's the PM's sister-in-law. She's been chatting away, kind of basically slagging him off to the newspapers. So he asked her about that, wasn't too happy, started calling her Cherie, just to annoy her, mouthing to the cameras, get ready for the fireworks. Now, David Guest, as I said, a name everybody's talking about here. The producers were a little bit concerned, John, that he didn't really get what I'm a Celebrity is about, that he didn't really understand this whole Bush Tucker trial scenario. Apparently, there's been a massive hoo-ha over his sunglasses, which are a general fixture in this guy's face. They've now come to a compromise. You can have tinted shades in the jungle. And, you know, they always have a luxury item, sometimes a lip gloss, a comb or whatever. He wanted his personal assistant to help him turn down his bed. Lots of other ructions. I mean, loads and loads of stuff going on there. I think it's going to be incredibly interesting to see. Ones to watch out for, David Guest and Fina O'Rouge from Footballers' Wives. She's turning into a little bit of a madam.
Wouldn't dream of going to the jungle without my personal assistant, Carla. Thanks very much indeed. Good to see you.
Yes, what would the sofa do without the both of us?
Exactly.
21 minutes past 6. Now, how many of us are unhappy with the companies who supply our electricity or gas? This week, the government's launching an exercise to see how energy companies can make their bills easier to read and understand. Last year, 50,000 of us complained about them.
Tens of thousands of complaints about incorrect bills, and they just keep coming. And just listen to some of the errors the energy providers have made. A disabled 86-year-old widow was sent bills totalling £2,600. She complained and British Gas threatened to cut her off. Hundreds of pounds in bank charges for another pensioner after gas bosses helped themselves to huge extra payments on his bills without bothering to tell him. After querying one of her bills, a 71-year-old woman was sent threatening letters from her provider, saying it would obtain a warrant to search her home, accompanied by police, and disconnect her supply. A £28,000 bill and a threatening letter for another elderly couple who'd paid their bills by direct debit for years. They fought their case and won. But the energy industry insists there have been improvements and says the number of complaints hasn't increased for years.
Well, joining me now is Adam Scorer from the consumer group Energy Watch. Good morning. So the number of complaints hasn't increased for years, apparently.
It hasn't gone down either, so it's a really sorry state of affairs that in all these years, 2 years actually after the GMTV campaign on better billing, we haven't seen any significant movement downwards in the number of people complaining to us about bills.
50,000, I think you were saying, last year, complaining about the bills. What seems to be the main problem?
Well, I think the main problem is around badly estimated bills, plainly wrong bills, where a consumer all of a sudden finds themselves with a bill they weren't expecting, something that's far too high. The second problem that we really get is that when these customers go to their suppliers to complain and try and get some sort of resolution to their problems, then they don't find a very good customer service problem either. So then that's why they come to Energy Watch. So 50,000, at least 50,000 people coming to us with serious problems about their bills.
Right, so it's not just, they're not just sort of like, you know, they don't just need information, they come to you because they're complaining.
We get 500,000 calls every year from consumers wanting simple pieces of information.
Right.
50,000 serious complaints about bills.
50,000 of those are complaints. Now, tomorrow the government is launching this consultation to actually improve the way that people use energy and improve bills and metering. What sort of difference will that make?
Well, it's a consultation and we're hoping it will make a big difference. One of the big problems we have is not just that energy companies, a lot of energy companies, some of them much better than others, find difficulty in providing you with an accurate bill, but the amount of information you have about your energy consumption can actually help you manage the amount of energy you use and therefore contribute to the imperative of fighting climate change problems. So it's really important this gets to the root of how we get better information about energy consumption to consumers.
And what should people do, finally, if they think that they are being billed inaccurately?
Well, I don't suffer in silence. We saw some of the terrible situations that you've just related there. Get in touch with the companies, try and get them to resolve their problem. If they can't, they can come to Energy Watch or they can go to a new ombudsman, which might provide them with some resolution to their problems.
Adam Scorer, thank you very much. Well, joining us now from Nottingham to respond to those claims, Duncan Sedgwick from the Energy Retail Association, the group which represents the gas and electricity companies. Good morning to you. So 50,000 complaints per year, and that seems to be year in, year out. Why?
Well, yes, you know, over the last 3 years it is 50,000 and it is reasonably static, and we're working hard, obviously, to try and improve that. The other two areas of complaints have reduced by 85% and 60%. So I don't think it is that we're doing badly here. We send out 200 million bills a year. So sadly, there are perhaps going to be some where there are some difficulties. But as Adam said, we've actually, during the course of the last 12 months, we've delivered a new energy supply ombudsman service, and we're also delivering a billing code. And that code is something all the companies have to work to, that is externally audited, and that will be really setting standards that they've all got to make sure that they follow about accuracy of bills, estimation of bills, etc.
Right, but what about this customer service, the follow-up? I mean, we heard there, for example, about people who got onto the supply companies to say, you know, the bill's too big or whatever. They actually complained about it. The companies themselves even said, yes, you're right. And then still these automatic threatening letters go out.
Well, that shouldn't happen, and clearly I don't know about the individual cases that you're talking about, and I'm not going to sit here and actually say that, oh, well, that's okay that these things occur. Each of the companies has to fix those things. They have to make sure that that standard of service is not given to customers. If customers are not happy, though, speak to the supplier. Yes, they can speak to Energy Watch, but the new service, the Energy Supply Ombudsman, that will actually deliver something where we have to adhere to whatever they say. So we have to stick to their ruling, and that can include paying compensation to the customer.
What would you think about, for example, larger penalties for cases which are particularly disturbing?
Well, the penalties that the Supply Ombudsman, the Energy Supply Ombudsman, can impose is up to £5,000, depending on what's actually happened in any particular case. So I think the penalty is there.
That's a
Each
drop
of the
in the
companies
ocean, though, isn't it,
has to provide high standards of customer service.
OK, well, thank you very much. I have to leave it there. Duncan Sedgwick, thank you very much for joining us. As ever, we want to hear your stories this morning. Have you had shortchange from your energy company, or maybe you're very happy with their services? You can email us on the website gm.tv, or you can text us 81189.
Time now 27 minutes past 6. Tomorrow night is the world premiere of the new Bond film, and in this week's competition we're giving you the chance to win a taste of the 007 lifestyle. Jenny Falconer is in the Bahamas with all the details.
Yes, not only can you win £10,000 by the end of today's programme in association with the Atlantis Resort, Paradise Island, the Bahamas and Sunset Faraway Holidays, but we're also throwing in a 42-inch high-definition plasma screen and DVD player, plus a DVD box set of all the past Bond movies. To have a chance of winning all of this, just answer the following question. What is the last word in the title of the Bond film For Your Eyes? A, solely, B, only, C, totally.
You can dial 09068 100 100. That's 09068 100 100. Or you can text A, B or C as your answer, plus your name and full address to 81149. Or you can enter via the website.
Lines close at 9. The winner announced as usual at the end of Lorraine's programme.
I've had lots of texts and emails about women in football.
Oh, have you? Good.
Mike Neil saying, I like Mark Pearson from Derbyshire's comment. Why not let women ref? Most of the players act like women anyway.
Well, good point. Sometimes they do. You're quite right. Another one saying Mike Newell is dead right, as I suggested they might. Yeah.
And has Mike Newell told Karen Brady that women shouldn't be in football? It's Bill Kendall in Kent. Here is the weather with Claire.
GMTV weather, sponsored by Nestle Cereals. Whole grain for the whole family every morning.
Hello, good morning. Now, it's probably worth investing in some draft excluders this week because it's going to be very windy indeed, particularly today and then on Thursday. All courtesy of an area of low pressure sitting up towards ice. And you can see a lot of clouds covering the country, now clearing away, but we've got broken cloud in its wake, and that's going to bring some showers and also some strong gusts, particularly to Scotland and to Northern Ireland, Northern England, through this morning into this afternoon. The cloud is broken across eastern Scotland as well as eastern England, but we're still hanging on to the cloud down towards the south, where we are seeing some rain only slowly clearing away, and some heavy showers now moving in across western parts of Scotland. For Northern Ireland, you should see some broken cloud through this morning, some sunshine as well, sunshine for parts of Wales away from the south of Wales, but even so here I think we could see 1 or 2 showers to head through the day. It's going to be a very windy day across Scotland. I would say gusts up to around 50 miles an hour, particularly across central and northern areas. Those showers piling in, particularly for the west, but hopping over the highlands. You can see a drier scenario here for eastern Scotland down towards the borders. It's southwest Scotland where we will see those showers. Southeast, not too bad at all. 1 or 2 showers for Northern Ireland, but some brighter spells here. And temperatures on the mild side, but add on the wind, it's going to feel a bit chilly in that wind. Northern parts of England seeing some fine weather through this afternoon, but there will be some strong gusts as well, perhaps up to 35, 40 miles an hour. And for Wales, some showers, particularly in the north and the south. You should see some brighter weather during the second part of the day. For the Midlands, East Anglia, down towards the southeast, it's a blustery day, at least, though some brighter weather, but hanging on to that cloud and the rain, places such as Brighton, Southampton, down towards southern parts of Cornwall as well as Devon, and it's going to be blustery here. Channel Islands seeing some rain right the way through the day. Tuesday we'll see the rain gradually move its way northwards, a brighter day for Scotland, and then on Wednesday more rain to come. It's turning wet and windy on Thursday. Here's your summary. Find out what's in store for the next 5 days on our website, gm.tv.
Good morning, it's 6:31, it's Monday the 13th of November.
You're watching the news hour here on GMTV. In the next half hour, why are many off-licences still selling alcohol to underage drinkers despite tough new anti-drinking laws? We'll be talking to the minister responsible.
And dropping off, why is it that more and more of us are desperate for a good night's sleep? Checking out the Z Factor in about 20 minutes' time. Let us know your thoughts on that. Do you get enough sleep? Text us 81189.
First, our top story this morning. Forensic teams in Iraq are to investigate how insurgents were able to attack a patrol boat, killing 4 British servicemen and seriously injuring 3 others. The Prime Minister, Tony Blair, is expected to call for Iran and Syria to be engaged in efforts to secure peace in the region. Richard Gaisford is at the Ministry of Defence. Richard.
Well, this team is going to be looking at exactly what type of explosive device was used to target this boat and how that happened in an open stretch of water. The Shatt al-Arab waterway is the border really between Iran and Iraq, and up until this point had been one of the more peaceful parts of southern Iraq to patrol. I mean, it is known that it's a major smuggling route of arms and explosives between Iran and Iraq, and that is one reason that Tony Blair is going to say that Iran and Syria should be brought into the fold, really. Perhaps they might have some ideas and some way of trying to quieten down some of the major issues in Iraq, and it mirrors a new approach too from the Americans, an approach that's changed since the midterm elections, to start talking to other people in the Middle East to try and sort out some of the issues there. 125 UK service personnel have now been killed since hostilities started back in 2003. The families of the 4 people who died are being told right now we don't yet know their names or their regiments, and of course there are the 3 who are seriously injured still in Iraq. They're being treated at the Shaiba Air Base. It's a major logistical base there, a big medical facility, and their condition is said to be very concerning.
Richard, for the time being, thanks very much indeed.
Let's get this morning's other news stories now from Amanda.
Penny, thank you. Good morning. Shoppers could make massive savings on imported alcohol and cigarettes without having to leave home. If an EU ruling goes ahead, it would mean be legal to bulk buy on the internet from suppliers anywhere in Europe. Rachel Harrison is at Dover. Rachel, good morning. Could this mean then the end of the booze cruise?
Yes, it could, and that's why the ferry companies are slightly concerned this morning, as are British off-licence and indeed the Chancellor. If this gets the go-ahead, there's an 80% chance that it will next week. It means that you will be able to order online alcohol and cigarettes tax-free from anywhere in Europe, which means huge savings. So, for instance, on beer, you'll save around £13 on a case. You'll save around £18 on a case of wine. And if you're a smoker, there are big savings to be had, because if you were to, say, get your cigarettes from somewhere like Latvia, it's £7.50 for 200. So that means you'll be saving more than £40. That said, I spoke to a number of people here who'd come back on the booze cruise yesterday, and they had a mixed reaction to the news.
Oh, no, I'd rather go and get it, because I like being in France and having a few of their Stellas and all.
What do you make of it? Would you still do a booze cruise?
Yeah, I still would. Yeah, still go across. It's day out.
Fantastic. Saves a cost on your ferry, doesn't it?
And whilst this change in law sounds great, there's one person who's not very happy at all, and that's Gordon Brown, because he makes £15 billion every year from the tax on alcohol and cigarettes. This could leave him with a big black hole. I can rest assure you that he'll be finding the money from somewhere else.
Rachel, thank you. The boss of Fairpack has apologised to his customers in a statement. Nick Gelody-Johnson says the collapse of the Christmas Savings Club is a tragedy. He also claims he's gutted about the thousands of people left out of pocket. Mr Gelody-Johnson blames the Halifax Bank of Scotland for cancelling the company's overdraft. Kylie Minogue has made a triumphant return to the stage after her fight against breast cancer. She's resumed her showgirl tour in Sydney, which she was forced to abandon last May because of her illness. In front of 10,000 screaming fans, Kylie's back. She's renamed it the Showgirl Homecoming Tour. In May last year, she was diagnosed with breast cancer just days before she was to perform in Sydney. There was even a duet with Bono. The 38-year-old star admits she's had to scale back the show as she recovers, but the fans weren't disappointed.
It was amazing. She's so beautiful. Kylie's my princess.
I loved it. Thank you. It was amazing.
Kylie's performing 20 concerts in Australia and comes to Britain in January. Brings the time now to 6:36. Our next news update is at 7. Now here's what's happening where you are this morning.
Good morning and welcome to the breakfast news from ITV Granada. First today, the funeral of a weapons operator from Liverpool who died when an RAF plane crashed in Afghanistan will take place today. 29-year-old Sergeant John Langton was one of 14 men killed when their Nimrod crashed in September. It was the worst single military loss of life in action in more than 20 years. A woman has undergone the UK's first computer-aided stomach surgery at a hospital in Cheshire to try and lose weight. Having reached more than 19 stone, Maria Convey decided to have a gastric band fitted. Usually the band would need tightening with a series of injections, but Maria's, fitted at the Alexandra Hospital in Cheadle, will be adjusted by signals sent from a computer. She hopes to lose up to half her body weight.
I've tried several diets. I've been to dietitians, to the doctors, and most of the time I've successfully lost the weight, but then in time I've put the weight back on, sometimes more as well. So basically I'm just a bit tired of always having that in the back of my mind, and I just would like to be able to live like everybody else.
Former Manchester United hero George Best is being immortalised on 1 million Northern Irish banknotes. The limited edition £5 note, which can be ordered from today, shows images of Best in both his United and Northern Ireland strips. They'll become legal tender later this month to coincide with the first anniversary of his death.
It's just absolutely stunning. The first time that I saw the note a few months ago, whenever they were in the early stages of designing it, I had to leave the room. It just depicts George in such a perfect way, and yet again such a lovely tribute to him.
Meanwhile, today sees the start of People's Millions for 2006 when we team up with a big lottery fund to give away £250,000 to a whole range of community projects. This week, we want you to vote for your favourites from our shortlist of 8. This evening, we'll visit Rainbows, a special needs therapy nursery in Nelson, which is looking to refurbish their multi-sensory room, while Pictor School in Timperley need the money to develop their grounds with suitable play equipment. Tonight on Granada Reports at 6, we'll show you how you can vote to ensure one of them receives a grant of up to £50,000. That's it for now. I'm back at 7:05. Time now for a look at the region's weather.
Relief for dry, chapped hands when they need it most. Nivea Hand SOS Intensive Balm.
A fairly cloudy start this morning with the odd spot or two of rain, but we should see more in the way of sunshine towards lunchtime. This afternoon should be mostly dry, with all parts catching some bright or sunny spells, highs of 13 degrees Celsius.
Welcome back. Our top story this morning, the deaths of 4 British servicemen in Iraq, dominating the front page. That's the Mirror this morning, Poppy Day massacre, and in the Independent also making the point that all this, of course, ironically happened on Remembrance Sunday. The men were patrolling the Shat Al waterway near Basra when an explosive device hit their boat. Weapons intelligence experts and forensic teams are now searching the area. Lisa McAllister reports.
British troops have been patrolling the Shat Al Arab Canal since 2003. The waterway forms the boundary between Iraq and Iran and is heavily monitored by the British to prevent explosives being smuggled across the border. Attacks on boats are extremely rare. Until now, it had been a relatively safe way to transport troops around the area. What the authorities are calling an explosive device hit the boat as it moved past. 4 troops died and 3 others were hurt. A major investigation is now underway.
Well, joining me now is Robert Fox, defence analyst of the London Evening Standard. Robert, good to see you. You know this stretch of waterway very well.
I've been in those boats.
You've been in those boats. Are those guys sitting ducks?
Yes, in a way, I'm afraid they were, but although great care is taken to patrol both sides of the channel, which is the meeting point of the Tigris and Euphrates. It's a main artery for smugglers as well as people, insurgents coming across. It's still there's something very odd about this story. I don't think the MOD is covering anything up. It may well have been a suicide boat, but it may well have been gangsters on the other hand. It's all mixed in together. Militias, pure organised crime, smuggling anything from scrap iron, but particularly open vats in barges of fuel that's being taken out from the oil fields. It's very sensitive, but it's been safe, as you've rightly said in your introduction.
But given where it is, right on the border there, do we know where the explosive device might have come from, or can we speculate?
We can speculate. I don't know for sure, but it is absolutely clear, and it's been clear for some time, nearly 18 months now, that some of the best stuff, the best triggering devices, and the best techniques have been coming across to the Shiite militias, not just one, but most of them, from Iran.
So would it be right for the United Kingdom, as is being suggested, to bring Iran and Syria into discussions about where we go from here?
Very, very much so, because they are crucial not only to containing the violence inside Iraq and not allowing it to spread, and that's a very big ask, but of course, even as far as southern Iraq is concerned, and Basra, where the British are, they've got to ask who is really behind this, because I don't think there's a hard-wire control to Mr. Ahmadinejad's administration in Tehran or the Ayatollahs. There are Revolutionary Guards who are extremely effective, who more or less do their own thing.
What I guess most of the folks at home want to know is that given that the Democrats now control Congress in the United States, and given that Rumsfeld is now gone, will an incident like this encourage those in power who believe that we should look to expediting the phased withdrawal of our troops?
It's just a flag in the map, isn't it? But I think that a lot of thinking has been going on quite clearly even before Congress went to the Democrats. Certainly Mr. James Baker has been very, very active. He's a very, very powerful figure. Not for nothing is he known as the Velvet Hammer. He was the strong man of Bush Sr.'s administration. And I'm led to believe that he has been in the region for some months, off and on, talking to people. He will be a man with a plan, although he will come up to Congress and to President Bush and to the Allies, because they're very, very multinational. The Baker boys, we ought to call them, and the Bush Senior team, and they will listen to what people like Mr. Blair have to say, and the Allied governments like Poland and Australia, who are now very important, and they'll come up with a range of options. But it won't be a full withdrawal, it'll be a pullback first, prior to a pull-out. But I think that Mr. Blair is saying privately, I want my troops out.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad farewell for him, would it?
By spring 2008.
Yeah. Wouldn't be a bad farewell, would it?
And I think he'll get it too.
Yeah. Robert, there we have to leave it. Thanks very much, Dee, for being with us.
Time is almost 6:44. Figures from a big trading standards operation out this morning show that many shops and off licences are still managing to sell alcohol to underage youngsters, and that is despite extended powers in the government's new Licensing Act to actually deal with illegal drinking. Sarah Moore has this report.
It's the same problem on streets up and down the country. Too many children getting their hands on alcohol. New licensing laws were brought in to clamp down on those selling alcohol to youngsters. In one operation, more than 40 off-licenses shops and pubs were caught selling alcohol illegally more than once. They now face losing their licence. Police and trading standards targeted 224 premises known to have served underage drinkers before. 53% of them successfully challenged the age of the customer, but that still leaves 47% selling alcohol to children illegally. So is enough being done?
There's no silver bullet that's going to solve the problem of underage alcohol misuse in the UK. It can only be tackled through a combination of factors.
This all comes as new figures claim alcohol kills 22,000 people every year. The government deny this, estimating the figures are in fact much less.
Well, joining me now is Home Office Minister Vernon Coker. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I am surprised 47% of shops targeted in this test failing to tackle underage drinkers.
Well, we're making progress on this, but clearly there's a lot more that needs to be done. We're determined to crack down on the small number of licensed premises that are selling to children. We don't want alcohol sold to children, and it's part of our approach to have a tough enforcement campaign, and we'll continue with this campaign until we drive it down still further.
You say a small number. 47% is actually almost half, isn't it?
Well, as I say, we are working with the industry to actually tackle this. We want to drive it down. We want to get to a situation where we don't have premises selling to children. We know it's an issue out there. We know it's of concern to your viewers and of concern to the public in general. Part of this is education, but alongside that, we want tough enforcement measures, and that's what we're going to do, and that's what we are doing.
Are the penalties tough enough?
Well, the penalties have been considerably strengthened in terms of the fines, but also in new legislation going through, they'll be toughened still further. But let's be clear about it. These premises that have failed this test now face their licences being reviewed. And if at the end of the day we have licensees that continue to sell to children, then ultimately they will lose their licence.
Why is it that we have such a problem in this country? We have almost the worst case in Europe, don't we, of underage drinking?
Well, we know that there's an issue with respect to underage drinking. We know there's an issue with respect to binge drinking. We've just launched a campaign, Know Your Limits, to actually tackle binge drinking. That deals with 18 to 24-year-olds, but we know that underage children will watch that as well, so we think that will make a difference there. There is a cultural problem out there with respect to this. We're tackling it through education, we're tackling it through enforcement, and we're tackling it by saying to people, we really do need to look at our attitudes to drink. Yes, enjoy drink, but let's know our limits.
And in the future, it's going to be a lot cheaper, isn't it? That's the front page of The Sun today. Hick, hick, hooray, saying that we're going to be able to import cheap drinks tax-free if we buy them on the internet. It's going to be able to come straight to our door. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a court decision that will be made next week, and clearly the Chancellor and the government will deal with that as and when the court decision is made.
Vernon Coker, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Time now, 30 minutes to 7. How are you feeling this morning? Tired, exhausted? Could you do with a few more hours in bed? Well, believe it or not, almost half of us get less than 5 hours sleep a night. And many of us would give up alcohol, shopping, football, doubt it. But if it meant we'd have a good night's sleep. Jonathan Swain is in Surrey for us this morning. Morning, Jonathan.
Morning to you, John. Well, I certainly didn't get any sleep last night, knowing I've got to do a live broadcast from a bed this morning. So I feel completely exhausted, but it's not just me, because apparently as a nation we're completely obsessed with how little sleep we actually get. So if you were tossing and turning last night, here's perhaps some of the reasons why you were. One of the worst offenders is actually work stress. Okay, what time do you want me there tomorrow? About 10:30. Sorry, go on.
Listen, there's a story for you in Rome.
Right.
We need you to try and get on a flight in about 2 hours' time. I think there is one.
What about this story?
Forget that.
Forget that?
Forget that. We've got to move on.
Go.
Could you please just try and look at this for me? Come on.
Now, most of us are guilty of this. We come home from work late, we slob in front of the TV with some food and a glass of something. But it may help us to relax, but eating late certainly doesn't help us to sleep. Although, an extra glass won't hurt, will it? The evenings are sometimes the only chance we get to catch up with things, but planning the next day, making lists and phone calls before bed is guaranteed to keep you tossing and turning all night. That quick cup of coffee or tea before bed certainly isn't a good idea. The caffeine will stimulate your body and keep your mind buzzing. Anyone with small children or babies will know that getting a good night's sleep is sometimes impossible. When they're awake, you're awake. Getting back to sleep can sometimes be very hard work. Night, darling. And my daughter thankfully finally went to bed last night and to sleep. I think she was very excited the fact she had a TV camera in her nursery. Well, there are plenty of things on the market to try and help you get a restful night. Make sure that your room is set at the right temperature. You've got the curtains drawn, of course. If it's not that dark, of course, there's eye masks available. This is also on the market as well at the moment. It's a plug which gives us a nice relaxing scent once it's plugged into the socket. And there's also plenty of sprays around as well. This one's a lavender spray, which if you give it a bit of a squirt onto your pillow, it sends off a nice lavender scent to help you relax. But I don't need any of those things, John, because as I say, I'm pretty exhausted after a long day yesterday and having this crew lot in my bedroom this morning. So if you don't mind, boys, off you go. Have that one off as well. Night, nice.
Sleep well, Jonathan. Join me now, Dr. Adrian Williams, a sleep loss expert from Guy's and St Thomas's Hospital here in London. You're wide awake. Good to see you. Thanks very much, Keith, for being with us. Is it true that we are sleeping less and less?
Yes, it is, actually. There's data going back more than 100 years. We used to sleep about 9.5 hours a night, and that's down to less than 7 hours a night now.
Why?
We have lots to do in the day. It's a 24/7 society, isn't it? We have to work a certain amount and we have to play a certain amount, and what loses out is sleep.
But surely wouldn't historians argue that 100 years ago life was even tougher than it is now?
No, I think probably not. You know, we have a lot of stress, which also influences our ability to sleep. I think things are probably more difficult.
Well, I was going to ask you about the facts. I mean, how damaging can this be? I mean, Margaret Thatcher, I mean, famously could sleep on, well, about 3 or 4 hours a night and get up and run the country. others can't. I mean, others like me, somehow or other, we need our 8 hours. In this particular job I'm in, where you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, that's not always that easy. But so how damaging is it?
It can be, and you're right, there are certain requirements for each of us, which is very individual. 8 hours is the average. And there is evidence that less sleep can change metabolism, that certainly cause sleepiness.
Make you ratty as well.
That's probably true, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and consequently, presumably, some from time to time affect relationships. And it's a serious point that people, you know,
Yes.
through the demands of their work or the stress, get less and less sleep and are less sort of sympathetic to their partners.
That's right. Again, there's evidence that the divorce rates are increased in people who don't sleep well, or particularly, for example, people who snore and have sleep apnea. You know, one of the conditions that...
Lots of drugs on the market, speaking of that, huge boom in these sort of various medications. Are they all, do you think, justified, or is this the industry just, naturally cashing in on what they see as a growing trend?
Yes. I'd have to say that none of them are really justified. Can one be categorical like that? Probably not, but in essence, one shouldn't be thinking about those remedies if snoring is a real problem.
Well, I must say, I was intrigued by Jonathan's lavender spray there. Maybe I'm wrong. I just fail to understand why the smell of lavender would make you go to sleep any more than the smell of anything else, quite frankly.
Me too.
Yeah. So what's your advice to people? I mean, there'll be lots of people who are watching this programme now have been up since, like me, 5 or 4 o'clock this morning, but not necessarily because they have a job to go to, simply because they can't sleep.
Yes, the solution there is, first of all, to improve everything around sleep, all the good and bad habits that we all have to pay attention to. You mentioned coffee. It's a very potent stimulant for those that can't sleep well or have difficulty.
Not too much alcohol either.
No, indeed, alcohol can help you get to sleep, but once it's metabolized, sleep is quite bad. Exercise is very good for sleep. There's a list of about 13 or 14 things.
Take the television out of the bedroom?
Absolutely. The bedroom is for sleep and perhaps other things, but
we can't advocate that, of course. Sitting where we sit. At the time of day we sit here.
Indeed.
But thanks for your advice. Good to see you. Thanks very much. Lots more advice, of course, as ever for you on our website. You know, it is gm.tv.
Actually, I finally succumbed to some natural sleeping tablets, and I did like the line on the back where it said, may cause drowsiness.
Yes.
Well,
so that scuba diver's watch that said do not immerse in water, yes. Yes.
And that's it from the news hour. Andrew and Fiona up next with GMTV Today.
Yes, they'll be tripping the light fantastic with the Simon Cowell of Strictly Come Dancing, Mr. Nasty himself, Craig Revel Horde.
But first, the weather with Claire.